Hello, everyone. It is Lauren. Welcome back to Take Action Tuesday. Today, we are going to talk all about the AAC system. What is it? What does it include? And I am ready to dive in. So, let's go. All right. So, AAC is augmentative and alternative communication. Defined by the American Speech Language Hearing Association, it is anything that is not spoken language. So this includes gestures, pictures, core boards, switches, and high tech devices. So before we go any farther, I want to break those down just for a minute. When we talk about no tech, it's anything you use your body for. Facial expressions, gestures, some sign language. I am going to make a quick note on the sign language component. American Sign Language is a language in and of itself, and there is a discussion in the AAC community and the sign language community about whether or not it falls into AAC. What I refer to when I'm talking about sign language is those basic initial signs, like maybe we're teaching more or we're teaching all done, some of those earlier kid dedicated signs. And I'm not really talking about ever adding those signs together to create sentences or using the unique structure that sign language has in their language. So I am really thinking more specifically just using signs as a basic introduction. If you want to know more about the discussion, there are resources out there for you to learn a little bit more. Next, light tech is when you use a tool. So we're thinking here something like paper and pencil. We could be thinking pictures. We could be talking core boards. We could be talking whiteboards. You're writing on a whiteboard. I do want to share one of my favorite light tech options. It's called the Pixie Pal. And what I love about this one, and I am in no way, shape, or form compensated for sharing this with you, I'm not an affiliate. I just like it because it's durable. It is waterproof. It is dirt proof. You just pop your communication boards in here, and then it also has a strap and can be carried around in some of those tricky places that maybe your high-tech device can't go. So next, we have mid-tech. Mid-tech is when we start to add batteries and some form of voice recording, typically. So things that you might think about here could be like a Go Talk, the green Go Talks, a Big Mac button. There are also lots of different types of buttons. And then there are some really fancy mid-tech devices. One of them I can think of is the Logan Prox Talker. It operates kind of, it has little picture chips, and when you put it on the Prox Talker, it says those vocabulary terms out loud. The high-tech devices are when we start to use that operating system. We're using a computer, we're using a tablet, we're using a phone, we're running software, and it typically has some type of synthesized voice to it. It's providing that voice output, but it's a digitized voice output. It's not necessarily you recording. Although that is an option, typically it starts with some type of other recording. Okay, so when we look at all of these components, we can see that AAC, the term AAC, makes up many different ways to communicate. So when you often hear AAC, you automatically assume we're talking about a high-tech AAC device, but there are a lot of other pieces to that. So keep that in mind when you use that term. Really, when you just say AAC, you're talking about that whole spectrum. So tends to be a little helpful if you're a little more specific on what type of AAC you're using. And this brings us to my next component of the AAC system. So this idea of an AAC system comes from listening to AAC users and really taking the information from above and applying it. We all use multiple forms of communication. We are multimodal communicators. So really the AAC system itself is comprised of all the different ways the individual communicates. All the different components of AAC that they're using make up that system. So one student's system might be TD Snap, picture communication at mealtime, a double switch in the bedroom for gaining attention, taking people places when they're trying to get attention met outside of that bedroom setting, and vocalizing and using facial expressions when frustrated. Another system may be writing to family and friends. It might be using a text to speech app when they're in the community. It might be using various gestures, signs, and facial expressions across environments. So, really, there's two main takeaways from this information. We need access to more than one form of communication. Just providing one individual thing is not necessarily going to meet their needs in all environments. Second, the individual needs to personalize their system to meet their needs. What works for me isn't necessarily going to work for the person next to me. So we really want to make sure we're providing that robust system. We're looking at the different ways we need to communicate, and then we're personalizing it for that individual. I totally realize that all of this sounds really overwhelming. Lauren, how in the world am I going to create multiple systems for all of my clients or multiple systems for all of my students? This is where I really want to encourage you to include the team in this process. You might be the one that can find that support, but maybe mom can print out the pictures at home and put them in her home. And you can help program the device or teach them how to program the device or talk through what other supports might be needed. Don't make this an individual effort. Please make this a team effort and work through that process together. So let's make today actionable. I would like you to make a list of your AAC users, and I want you to think about their AAC system. What do they use to communicate? And once that list is done, are there any gaps? Are there any places that you feel like, you know what, we have this AAC device in the classroom, but you know what, I'm noticing they're not taking it outside on the playground. What can I do to make that a more successful environment for that child to communicate? And yes, taking the device onto the playground could be that solution, but maybe there's something you could put on your wrist so they still have access to communication. There's a lot of different creative ideas that you can kind of dive into to make communication more accessible. So, do they have the tools they need to communicate anywhere they want and with any communication partner? So, I hope you enjoyed this short episode, and we will see you next week.